Good evening.
Good evening, Mary Margaret. How are you?
Good. Nice to be here with you, and really happy for all those who are gathered for our community conversation this evening.
Yes, welcome everyone. Can't believe we are coming up on our third season of Community Conversations.
Yeah, it's good to be here with you and good to be here with all our friends.
Yes.
So I'm the Reverend Mary Margaret Earl, and I'm the Executive Director and Senior Minister at the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry, which is a faith-based nonprofit that's grounded in the John Elliott Square neighborhood of Roxbury. And we are housed in the historic campus that most folks locally know as First Church Roxbury. And our organization is committed to working for social justice and to advance racial, economic, and social justice. And tonight's community conversation is a part of the work that we seek to do in that realm.
Yes. And our community conversations highlight the history, art, and experiences of Black and Indigenous people of color. For the last 3 seasons, these conversations have provided an opportunity to raise awareness around some of those issues that plague the residents of color in Boston neighborhoods. These conversations have been so instrumental in providing information on how to support organizations and how to help their work for people of color. And this season, our conversations are focusing on the racial wealth gap and economic justice, 2 very important issues for the urban ministry. So please stay connected with us to find out more about our upcoming conversations this season.
Thank you, Monique.
You're
and tonight,
welcome.
our agenda includes, first, we're going to share a commitment minute with you, which is a brief minute video that enables the sponsoring organization to speak to why they're sponsoring these conversations, why they think it's important. This evening, our partner organization, Holland and Knight Law Firm, is going to provide the commitment minute. Then we're going to highlight how viewers can support and be involved with Black-owned businesses in Roxbury. Tonight, we're going to feature our own artist catalog as a way that folks can do their holiday shopping. So we're going to highlight that. And then our main event, we are so excited to welcome the Reverend Willie Bodrick II for a conversation about how we support Black-owned businesses. What are the barriers? What are the opportunities? We're going to have a conversation with him.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And as you mentioned, tonight's Commitment Minute is being sponsored by Holland and Knight Law Firm. At Urban Ministry, we have member congregations and partner organizations who are committed to engaging in social and racial justice work with us. And tonight, we are so proud to have Holland and Knight Law Firm be the Commitment Minute sponsor. They've been involved in so many areas of our work in the urban ministry, and it is truly a pleasure to have them share their Commitment Minute with us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Josh Krumholz. I am a partner at the law firm of Holland and Knight, and we are so pleased to have you here this evening for this community conversation. We are pleased and proud to have been involved for some time now with the urban ministry, with the amazing work that they do to foster social justice, to support their community, and to support the families and neighbors that surround them. And it's with great pride that we have an opportunity to work with them to achieve many of those goals. So I think you're in for a great conversation. We also are delighted to be sponsoring such an important topic. Urban renewal, neighborhood revitalization is such a critical component to helping families thrive and achieve economic and personal success that we're delighted to be involved. So enjoy the conversation and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Holland and Knight, for your support. And now we're excited to share with you a way that you as viewers can support Black-owned businesses. And tonight we're featuring our very own Roxbury artist catalog. So we're going to show you a little bit about that. as we talk about it. So this is the second year that the Urban Ministry has created a Roxbury Artists of Color catalog. We're proud to be offering this again during this community conversation. This is a beautiful catalog that's full of the artwork of local artists, and we hope that all our viewers tonight will go to the Urban Ministry website, which is www.uum.org, to check out the catalog and do your holiday shopping with these wonderful local artists.
And one of our commitments at the Urban Ministry is finding ways to address the racial wealth gap, which we know impacts so many of us in the Boston area and across this country. This is an easy way and a direct and uplifting way to support the entrepreneurs of color in the Boston community. You can find beautiful bracelets, children's books, glass items, beautiful photography. Please take a look through this catalog, and we encourage you to take time to really share it with other people, your friends, your church family, and your community. It's important to the Urban Ministry to shop local so that we can all assist in the making of change for this community. So please do lots of holiday shopping.
Yeah, lots of beautiful things there, Monique.
Many things to choose from.
Yeah. All right, so now to our main event. We are so honored with the ability to welcome our guest this evening, the Reverend Willie Bodrick II. Before we introduce him, I want to let the folks gathered here know that you'll have an opportunity to ask questions by putting your questions in the Q&A function that you see at the bottom of your screen. So we'll leave a little time at the end for Reverend Bodrick to answer some questions, and hope that you'll begin percolating now. So the Reverend Bodrick brings to this many gifts and abilities and qualifications. He has a law degree. He has been active in Massachusetts politics. He's a minister, and he's a social justice fighter. He's also the newly named CEO of the American Cities Coalition, which is a Roxbury-based organization that's seeking to help revitalize urban neighborhoods so that families flourish and fully benefit from economic opportunities. Reverend Bodrick serves as a senior pastor of a Historic 12th Baptist Church, and he's an outspoken advocate for social and economic justice. He led the 182-year-old church through the challenges of the pandemic, including partnering with the Boston Medical Center to establish a vaccination clinic at 12th Baptist that vaccinated 2,500 people. And he also led efforts to feed more than 15,000 residents in 2021 during the height of the pandemic. In his new role at the American Cities Coalition, he's focused on advancing social and economic justice in the Roxbury community. Under his leadership, the American Cities Coalition, known as TAC, recently launched Roxbury Works. That's W-O-R-X, I assume a play on the X in Roxbury, which is a workforce development model to bring untapped talent of Roxbury's hidden middle skills workers into the talent pipeline in 3 industries: biotech, life sciences, healthcare, and green blue tech.
Excellent. Reverend Bodrick was born and raised in Atlanta, and he is inspired by the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the history of the civil rights movement. He's committed to continuing the legacy of creating a beloved community and balancing the scales of justice. Willie holds a BA from Georgetown University and a Master's of Divinity from Harvard Divinity School. And in 2020, Willie graduated from Northeastern University Law School, receiving a JD degree. And in May of 2022, he received an honorary doctorate of community service from Northeastern University. His background includes serving as a senior advisor for the successful 2020 Ed Markey campaign for the US Senate, and as the outreach coordinator in the Community Engagement Division of Massachusetts Office of the Attorney General, Maura Healey. He is also a loving father and husband to his wife and son who reside in Roxbury with him.
So welcome, Reverend Bodrick. We are happy to have you here.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for having me, and thank you for that warm introduction. Let me first say to Reverend Mary Margaret and Monique, I am so honored to be here with you all, and thank you for your constant commitment and the work of UU Urban Ministry and all the great things that you all are doing for our neighborhood each and every day. And so we're grateful for you, and I'm grateful to be in conversation today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I did we already had a question with somebody asking if we were going to record this. They have to drop off. So yes, this is being recorded and it will be posted on our website. So folks will be able to see it and to share it and to watch it fully if you need to leave. But we hope most of you will stay with us for this 1 hour gathering. So Reverend Bodrick, to start us off, I wondered if you could tell us a bit about your new role at the American Cities Coalition and what your vision is for the work of the coalition.
No, thank you very much. Well, first and foremost, I've stepped into this role earlier this year, June of this year, and I was appointed and selected by the board of the American City Coalition to be president and CEO. We're a almost 30-year organization that has been focused on urban revitalization, particularly in neighborhoods like Roxbury. Our history comes out of the vision of Joe Corcoran, who founded TAC to do the work after his great work in Harbor Point of trying to think about how to revitalize and recreate communities that will be not only sustainable, but what could thrive and eventually flourish. And so that is our goal. That is our mission, to make sure that people fully benefit from the economic opportunities and prosperities that American cities usually experience, but make sure that everyone can experience that equitably. And what we do in particular at TAC is that we center all of our work around what we call resident identified barriers. And so those resident identified barriers is really lifting the voices of those who live in community with us, lifting the voices of the people, and ensuring that their voices lead and direct our work. And our work is I reduce it down to about three categories. It's economic development, it's workforce development, which is a new aspect of TAC I'm looking forward to talking about, and it's research and policy. And to answer your question around the vision of this community, my vision is to create a community where we can catalyze what I would call intentional growth. We want to see intentional growth and development that creates an economic ecosystem that will address those challenges that our residents and our community folks, that our partners have identified, and ensure that families can face those challenges, we can overcome those challenges and allow for residents and families to thrive. And we hope that by doing this, we'll begin to stem the tide of displacement that we've seen over the past few years in our neighborhood, particularly in Roxbury, stem the tide of leakage that we see in our neighborhood, and really have a serious conversation around engaging people in access and opportunity. And that's what the vitality and revitalization work that we're trying to create and bring about in Roxbury should be all about. And that would be the vision, to create a community where each and every person who lives in that community feels as if they not only own a piece of this neighborhood, but they have a access to actually experiencing that prosperity. And they know that not only will they experience it, their children, their grandchildren will as well.
Can you say for folks what you mean by the leakage that you described? You talk about the displacement and
I would love to. I mean, I think that helps us kind of jump into some of the barriers or the challenges that we're facing right now, right? So leakage is one of those economic terms that describes how capital or income escapes our community. So instead of it being invested in a business or in a retail space in Roxbury or in Nubian Square, you end up going to Back Bay. You end up going to Seaport. You end up going to, Coolidge Corner, wherever you may go for to buy lunch or to invest or to buy certain things. And many a times it's due to a community not having the infrastructure and forcing residents to be displaced even in their economic engagement with entities like retail. And so that's what we mean by leakage. That's the thing that we're trying to address. And I think right now, and if I may, because I think that question drives us towards what are the challenges we're facing, right? Nubian Square is at a pivotal moment in our community. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of building happening, a lot of cranes in the sky and shovels in the ground, which is exciting. There are projects going up all around us. I can think of the Nubian Ascends project next door to us. I can think of the BFIT project. I can think of the Haley House project and other projects that are close, P3 right down the street. So we have all of this activity happening in this particular moment. I think the biggest question that residents are asking, who is it going to be for?
Mm-hmm.
Who's
Yep.
going to benefit? And when we see those types of shifts, when we see those type of changes, as excited as we want to be, we also have a little bit of angst because we know that many a times that means that this neighborhood growth and development that has at times been overlooked in generations past,
Yep.
not for us. And so our job is to figure out how do we make sure that this moment is different than previous moments. It's not that the fight and the advocates have not been there. We've had a history and a legacy of fighters in Roxbury, history and legacy of folks who have advocated. And yet people have lost hope that this city deeply cares about our neighborhood. But I'm excited. I'm thankful. I'm optimistic because I think our job is to ensure that folks who have been living in this neighborhood not only reap the benefits of it, but they are included in the opportunities to help facilitate its growth and development. And so that's where we sit at a interesting juncture and center where we're having conversations with industry, we're having conversations with politicians and policymakers, we're having conversations with folks on the ground, most importantly, and really thinking through how do we create a healthy nexus where this community thrives, but also sustains those who have built it in the first place.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you speak a little bit, Reverend Bodrick, to your vision for Roxbury Work and explain to us what your definition of workforce development means and, address, where are the gaps for workforce development and what can we do to help close that gap a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's important that we sort of contextualize why I believe workforce development is so important in this moment. Nubian Square has some challenges, right? We've had a low share of jobs and establishments as we've discussed accommodations and food, arts, entertainment, and recreation. Those are jobs. When we're talking about all these new developments, those are jobs. When we're talking about what's happening both pre and post pandemic, we're talking about an economic system that has an impact on each and every aspect. Nubian Square has a high percentage of workers that are in that neighborhood. I think about the bowling building, I think about the community organizations, the health centers, and all the folks that are coming into the neighborhood. And yet the Nubian Square income households are relatively low compared to other neighborhoods. The median household income is lower than most neighborhoods in comparative business districts. And so right now, as we're talking about gentrification, as we're talking about displacement, I believe you can't talk about building and strengthening housing and putting in policies without also talking about income and also talking about wealth generation. And that is tied to jobs and workforce development. And so what we really recognize in this particular moment is that we needed a serious workforce development model that could engage each and every person in the Roxbury community and the greater Roxbury community. I don't think it's limited to Roxbury. We're thinking about Dorchester, Mattapan, folks who live in our neighborhoods that are adjacent. And so what we began to do in the work that I want to bring to TAC is to say, look, we know that there have been resident identified barriers to accessing meaningful jobs. And what our goal was is to focus and use Roxbury Works as an opportunity to change the way employers recruit, to change retention practices, to really think about developing in-demand roles that will help to use the educational assets that are already in our neighborhood and that are coming in our neighborhood and engage Roxbury residents in the workforce. And what we said, we wanted to focus on what we call middle skilled workers and hidden workers in our community. Roxbury Works is all about changing the narrative around the Roxbury workers from one that is deficit-based, how folks use language like low skills or low educational attainments, to one that's asset-based. We have a community of people who are not only hardworking, but they bring unique capabilities to the workforce, and they also bring lived experiences that I believe will help any business owner think through the problems and the issues that they're facing. Beyond that, we also know we're in a moment, in a post-George Floyd, post-pandemic moment, where the conversations around diversity have been amplified. And so we want to make sure that we hold people accountable and make sure that they are serious about the commitments that we heard throughout the pandemic. And so we know in our neighborhood in Roxbury, there's a multiplicity of talent that exists in our community. And it is disheartening when I hear Monique and Reverend Mary Margaret that they can't find good people. They can't find good candidates of color, Black and brown folks. And so what we began to do, this is really actually based off a model that was began in San Antonio, Texas, and it's been supported by the research findings of Harvard Business School. Roxbury Works is really trying to help folks who have been historically underrepresented engage seriously in the workforce and be taken seriously in the workforce and given real opportunity and access. We're thinking about Black and brown folks. We're thinking about caregivers. We're thinking about immigrants. We're thinking about folks who are returning citizens. We want to open up the pathways to meaningful careers. And by doing that, we believe that it will have a positive impact and increase the individual socioeconomic status of not only our residents, but their families. And if we do that, that brings about stability, that brings about increased wealth, that brings about opportunity to have shared prosperity in this city, particularly in the Roxbury community. It changes the conversation of housing policy as well when we can increase the wealth of folks in our neighborhood. We know that those two policies, housing and workforce development, have to work part and parcel. They can't work separate and apart from each other. And so what we tried to do in this particular model is to think about Roxbury Works as a place-based model that could support folks in different sectors over time. We chose 3 sectors: biotech and life sciences. Right now, we are the biotech and life science capital, not of the country, but of the world. There have been billions of dollars, whether you're reading the Globe or you're reading the BBJ or whatever you're reading, they will tell you about the thriving life science economy that is being built here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And so many times when thriving economies are built, our community is left out. And so that's the reason why we targeted life sciences and biotech. The other was healthcare. Right down the street at Boston Medical Center, there are over 1,000 jobs available right now. That could change and shift some family in the immediate. And then we chose blue, green, and tech. Our economy is shifting. There have been huge conversations. I think there was a huge environmental conference on last week, huge conversations with the COP27, huge conversations around what's happening around the world. We know that the environmental industry is growing and budding as we speak, and we don't want to be left out of that economy as well. And so we know that these opportunities in these sectors have opportunities for growth, and we know that there are thousands of middle-skilled workers that can be paired with middle-skilled jobs. And obviously there has been a disconnect between those folks who are on the ground and those folks who are seeking jobs and those people who quote unquote say they can't find good people. And we think that there's a business case, but there is a moral case for me. But there's a business case as well, right? There's a business case that you don't have to bring somebody in from out of the country or out of the state to come into our neighborhood and work. We have new life science spaces coming up. We have things like RCC, so education assets like RCC and BFIT. You have Madison Park, Dearborn STEM, all of these institutions. We have an opportunity to create an ecosystem and a zone where a young person can grow up in this neighborhood and be educated as well as employed and never have to leave Roxbury. That's the vision of this. And so when we're thinking about this, we began the work and we started to do this work. And so we're so excited about the work because we believe that you can't do any of this work without partnership. Yep. It has to be multi-sector and multi-layered partnership. And so we're thankful that when we brought this idea to folks and I began to talk to all of these leaders, BMC jumped on board, RCC jumped on board, BFIT jumped on board. LaSalle University jumped on board. Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts jumped on board. You had ICIC, who was right there in Roxbury. You had Mass Bio and Mass Bio Ed. They jumped on board. Boston Public Schools jumped on board. And SkillWorks out of the Boston Foundation, they all jumped on board. And there were others who said, look, we're here. We want to be in work with you. Mass Life Sciences has been a great partner to us in this work. And so what we're thinking critically about is how do we create an opportunity to bring folks together who are in this space to have a major impact on those who live in this community. And we know that there's an opportunity right now, particularly in life sciences and healthcare, where we know that our hospitals have dealt with the stress of losing folks, not only those who are patients, but also losing people who are great workers, who felt the stress and strain of COVID, that we have people who are ready and willing to work. And we want to do something that's intentional. Many of workforce development programs, they set out and just say, we're going to hit these numbers. That's good to a certain degree, right? It's good in the sense that, there's some type of aspirational goal and we have a target, but we're not having serious conversations around how do we make sure not only do we meet the needs of that person, but we also identify the barriers that it takes to get them beyond whatever it is that won't let them into industry and keep them there. So we're talking about language barriers. We're talking about how do we address core and story reforms, right? We're talking about the tough issues. How do we deal with childcare? How do we deal with someone who has working multiple jobs and they're trying to figure out how can they make ends meet if they want to take this next opportunity? And so we're looking at industry, we're looking at our educational partners, we're looking at those folks who are on the ground in workforce development programs. And I just believe at this moment, if we join hands, we can capture this opportunity. We started on November 10th. We launched a conference. We had over 200 attendees. We had amazing panels and presenters. We had Manjari Rahman from Harvard Business School, who presented her research called Untapped Talent, Hidden Workers and Middle Skilled Workers, along with HBS. We had a forum around big strategies, talking about overcoming systemic barriers to work and how do we in the Commonwealth expand the job market. We had a keynote address from Ron Marlowe, who was an amazing keynote speaker and has been a huge voice in the space of workforce development. And then we had all of our educational assets and programs come and talk. And we have folks there hear from presidents like Jackie Jenkins Scott, Dr. Jackie Jenkins Scott over at RCC, or Dr. Aisha Francis at BFIT. We had Ken Turner, who was there as well from Mass Life Sciences. And so we got to talk about what educational assets are in Roxbury and what can be done, because one of the other pieces we're trying to do is to get employers to rethink credentialism. That we need stackable credentials. We need certificate programs. We need apprenticeship programs. And if you can ensure that folks come through a Roxbury Works or one of the programs attached to this initiative, that they are ensured an opportunity and a job. And that's what we're really trying to do. We want to not just see people as a number, but see them as the person that they are, see them as my neighbor and my friend or my family member or my congregant, to see them as somebody that who deserves to be seen beyond just a mark in a tick in another number of the statistic numbers that we're saying, look, this is a real person who has a real family. And if we have an impact on this family, we also have an impact on their children and their children's children.
Thank you for all of that. And I want to clarify that BFIT stands for Ben Franklin Institute of Technology, right? Just
Ben Franklin Cummings Institute of Technology.
Okay, thank you.
As of very recent.
All right, especially lately. They got
that's the new edition.
Yeah,
new edition, definitely.
For sure. And I just want to say I was struck. You mentioned that you started at TAC just a few months ago, and you are starting your tenure with a very ambitious, vision. And I was struck by you convening all of these partners together very quickly into your time and really trying to drive this right away. Really working hard. From the get-go.
The beautiful thing is that as a person of faith, I believe that my path has been very intentional. And I've been very blessed to come across a lot of folks, whether in industry or in community, who I had a lot of these conversations with over the years. And I think a lot of it's about the right time and the right opportunity. And I think
Yep.
this is the right time and this is our opportunity. And many of those relationships came to bear. Folks are excited. People want something to do to really have an impactful change in this moment. And I believe we all believed in this idea and we recognized the need of this moment. And so it was an aggressive approach, but it was a necessary approach.
I hear it.
And I think
Yeah.
our team, Carol Walton, who's an amazing work has done in this community and been an advocate in this community and works on the TAC team. Charlotte Rice, who is amazing work and is an advocate, and they've been doing great work. And so we believed in this and we keep going. We keep pushing this forward, and we're thankful for our partners who continue to meet with us even after the first launch, because as we told people at the conference, this is not a splash in the pan. This is a sustainable initiative that we're looking forward to push forward. And we hope we engage more people as we continue the programming that will hopefully lead to policy shifts.
Yeah. We're already starting to get some questions. So I'm gonna, if it's okay,
Yeah.
it's all right with you, Reverend Bodrick, maybe
That's
start to pepper our questions with folks who are asking questions. So this is from Vincent. Says, Reverend Bodrick, 2 questions. 1, what would you like to see Roxbury look like in 2030 in terms of the balance of affordable residences, non-affordable residences, and business of all types? So, 2030. And then 2, tourists from out of state are very interested in supporting diverse neighborhoods. Mayor Wu has expressed interest in tourist dollars to go beyond Back Bay and the seaport. How can Roxbury businesses and or community leaders be more proactive in working with the mayor's office to help make that happen? Thank you for your remarks.
Yeah, both of those questions, and if I may, to answer those questions, I would like to wear both of my hats, because I think both I care deeply about. In regards to the first question, if you could just say it one more time, because I'm thinking.
What would you like to see in 2030?
2030.
Yeah, in terms of affordable residences and businesses.
I tell this story. I had a couple friends come in from California, and they said, we want to see the church. We want to see Roxbury. We've heard so much about it. They say this is the part of Boston that most people don't get to come and see. But so we've heard about it. We know about it. So much history. So I took them on a personal tour around the community, some of the sites that we always go to, coming to the church, get the experience space. And it was like, we want to eat and dine in Roxbury. This is a Saturday. We was there in the morning. It's like, let's do brunch in Roxbury. And to be honest, there was no place to do that. And we had to take our monies elsewhere for them to have a lunch.
Leakage you mentioned, right?
The leakage. Yeah. So when we talk about 20 years from now, we want to be able to see a community where you're not forced to go out of this neighborhood. You choose to. We want a walkable community where people have the resources that they need to be sustainable. I want to be able to be in at least into Roxbury in 10 years until late at night, till 10 o'clock, where we've had dinner, we've had a good time, or we can watch the game and not have to go anywhere else to do that. I hope that in 20 years that we have enough of the things that we need, whether that is a dry cleaner or a shoe repair store or, toy stores, game stores, hardware stores. I mean, these are things that are usually basics in most neighborhoods that many a times either we've had in intervals because they couldn't sustain them or they're not there. And so we're really trying to push towards creating an ecosystem of sustainability where we don't have to leave the neighborhood, where people want to come into our neighborhood, where people are excited to come into our neighborhood. And in regards to affordability, I think we have to have a different conversation. I think to be very candid, we do need affordable housing. That is a reality. That I don't think it will be unfair to those who are in our neighborhoods who we know need affordable housing. However, there's another piece to that conversation. We need another conversation around housing affordability. And what do I mean by that? That, yeah, there are some people who don't meet certain thresholds, but can't buy in our neighborhood. There are young professionals who would love to stay in our neighborhood, but it's more affordable to go live in Randolph or to go live in Brockton or to go somewhere else where they can afford to stay in this neighborhood. I was talking to a parent the other day who was saying, look, my child just moved back. They did everything I asked them, and they can't afford to stay in the neighborhood. And that's the issue we want to fix, right? And so, yes, we're going to have strategic approaches towards housing to ensure that we are thinking critically about what that looks like. But we also need contextually sensitive development. And we also need to have some anti-displacement policies to protect folks who have been here for a long time. And so that's the piece that we need to really think about. I think many of us are ready and excited. We have great relationships with the city to have these conversations and how we're going to drive that forward. And so I do think there are conversations that are actively happening right now. In regards to the tourism question,
Yeah.
that's been a question that predates even my living in existence in this world. We know that this has been an issue, and I would argue that before the mayor was even the mayor, this has been a conversation for previous mayors from generation to generation. Many of the dollars that come into tourism stay downtown in Beacon Hill, stay downtown, usually in the financial district, stay downtown. And the ways in which we do that is to have a serious conversation around shifting the perspective around Roxbury and the city. We have cultural assets and anchors that not only anchor Roxbury, but they anchor Boston. And one of the things that we think about at our church is, how do we celebrate? I mean, we grew out of the African meeting house. That is our history. We are literally from 1805 to the present day. We have that history, and yet, other than going on the tour, the Freedom Tours, or one of the tours in the meeting house, you wouldn't even know that the people who were once in those buildings still exists. The generations still here. And so we have to have serious conversations around, how do we amplify our cultural assets in our neighborhood? We have great artists, we have great opportunities, but the investment has to be real. And it's not just a question about advocacy, because I promise you, I can galvanize hundreds of advocates who want to see tourist dollars. There are folks who have started tours in this neighborhood and began those conversations. I know us, even as 12th Baptist Church, my desire is to build a museum to speak towards that great history of our church, to make sure that we amplify the opportunities to bring the arts and culture. We partner with Berklee College of Music, and they brought the Marian Anderson String Quartet, and we had over a 50-piece orchestra in our church for free. We want to amplify the arts and culture of this community. And I think that if we're going to have a serious conversation about that, we need folks to be serious about investing and wanting to make sure that that happens. We need the dollars to match the talk. And so that's what we're trying to do. And we recognize that we need that help. We need that support. We need those investments. And I know as we try to build the 12th Baptist Church Museum here in the Roxbury community, we're going to need folks to say, you know what, that's something that's important. We need to know the great history of this city and tell the story of this church that comes from the African Meeting House all the way into Roxbury, from 1805 all the way to 2022, and we're still doing the work to tell the church of a church that was an anti-slavery church, that was a housing and a space for those who were escaping slavery, those who have a history of some of the greatest history figures in American history that came out of this institution. We're celebrating 185 years as 12th Baptist Church in 2025. We'll be celebrating 220 years since our origination in the meeting house. That's major history. And we can tell a story about education equity. We can tell a story about gentrification, because we didn't just pop up in Roxbury. We can tell a story about how things have an impact on our community. And as I've told our community and our church, this is our last stop. We shall not be moved from Roxbury, but we need those intentional investments, because people need to see the entirety of the story. The last thing I'll talk about when it comes to the tourism, I think it ties us back to a conversation around Black erasure in the city of Boston. Black story erasure, Black narrative erasure. And many a times, because there's been a Black erasure, people don't get to know, they only get to know what we promote out to the nation or promote out to the world. And so people don't know that some of the richest Black history in this country, right here in Boston, right? like some of the richest Black history in America. And I come from a very historic Black city in Atlanta who is proud of that amazing Black history. But some of the richest history and Black history in this country is right here in Boston, but you would not know that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
agree.
And that is because the stories have not been told. And so we need to create institutions, create spaces so that we can tell our stories. That's why we're excited about the Embrace. I know that Mari's there, but we're excited about telling our story and have an opportunity by telling our story. It hopefully empowers others to tell their story and be affirmed in the reality of the stories of all Bostonians, not just one narrative being told, but a multiplicity of narratives that kind of creates this quilt that hopefully brings warmth to all of us and tells a more true, integral narrative about who we are as a city.
Mhm. And listening to you mention the multiple conversations that are going on about this work and the importance of holding businesses accountable for those, DEI statements that were put out a few years ago, and
Right.
making sure they stand true to those.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to think about the partnerships and the initiatives that can help move this work forward. And I think there was a question actually that popped in about your Savor the Square efforts, and how important that movement is to this work. Can you talk a little bit about how that work is going and what the efforts are that you are focused on now?
Definitely. So Savor the Square, which is headed up by my great colleague Carol Walton, and I'm glad to be a part of leading these great efforts that we have. It really grew out of a market analysis that we did out of TAC in 2020. It was literally right before the pandemic. And this was really focused on many of those resident identified barriers that we did. And this research really covered what do we need to do in Nubian Square to really revitalize it. So the reality is we have been dealing with the issues pre-pandemic that we're still talking about post-pandemic. And all COVID did was pretty much amplify and expose the problems in a more drastic way, because we did lose some folks and we did lose some opportunities and we did lose some businesses. However, Savor the Square was saying, how do we support local vendors, local businesses, those folks who need sustainability in a post-COVID world, and how do we give an opportunity to not only celebrate them by helping them have a platform, but also celebrate culture. And so we've had multiple Savor the Squares where we had over 23 vendors. We hired a vendor manager, Black-owned Boston, and so a shout out to Black-owned Boss, who does an amazing work, and Jada and all of her team does an amazing work who running our vendors. We had various artists at each and every single Savor. And we were there in the middle of community. We were at the Blair Lot at first, and then we moved into the Roxbury Library where we've been. And it's been an amazing opportunity not only to share and to create a platform and showcase the intentional support of local businesses. That's the intentional aspect of what we're trying to do to make sure that we put money in the pockets of these folks who are trying to sustain or either grow their businesses. And when we did exit surveys, we also tied the work that we were doing to the local economy of Roxbury and Nubian Square. And so we began to provide food from those businesses that are right there. Joe's Subs, who did an amazing job. Thank God for Joe's, and shout out to their partnership, who provided food for us. And we created coupons where people could go free if they came to support a vendor and things of that nature. But we were able to support other local restaurants and do that work who had never been asked to come into a shared economy space and to support not only their business, but also support these businesses. And so we're excited because we're about to start the next planning phase for 2023. And we offer, to our UU partners, they want to be a part of the committee and thinking through how we do this in Roxbury and amplify this work. We engage other partners who may be listening. Maybe you're a resident of another city, or you're a member of a different congregation, or you're someone who just cares about this work, to be a part of these efforts efforts, to come and invest in these efforts, to come and invest in these businesses. These are folks who are doing amazing work. I bought some great honey. I bought some great jewelry. I bought some great things. I'm ensuring that I put my money where my mouth is. And we hopefully will help those folks sustain themselves and grow. One of the biggest fears that we have is that we lose the businesses that we do have. And that's always a hard thing. I remember when Frugal Bookstore was on the ropes, and they had their fire, and there were some things they needed. I think of one of our vendors very recently who was a florist, and she needed support because she was going through hard times. We can't lose the businesses that we have, or we continue to start again from ground one and level one. And so what we've been trying to do is to make sure that we focused on supporting local businesses and continually giving them a platform. One of the best testimonies that I heard from a sister who was a vendor, she said, I just want to thank you all, because if it was not for you all, I would not have stayed afloat. And
yeah, that's a really important work. And that is such a concrete, way for people to make a direct impact right away. Like, there's lots of things we all need to be doing to address this gap. And we need to be working toward all of them. And that, though, is one really easy thing, right? To support, to go spend your dollars with a Black-owned business in Nubian Square. And I would love to have the urban ministry coordinate some visits to the Savor the Square and generate some interest from some of our friends to be part of that. And so I don't know when they start again, maybe in the spring, but I would be.
We're going to try to get through winter.
Winter's not a great time for an outdoor market, but we would love to bring a group of people and really be part of that.
Definitely. No, we greatly appreciate that, and we're thankful for that. I think another piece that people could possibly consider, if they have sets and if they have resources to help with tech support. A lot of entities are trying to get off the ground. Particularly, I'm thinking about website design. I'm thinking about, working through process, through documents. Some people just need the help. Not because they can't competently do it, but because they may not even have time to do it. Right? It's absolutely. If I want to keep this business alive, I gotta do A, B, C, and D and get this done. And so, thinking through ways in which you can give of your service and your skills as well is important. Also, and just to be very candid, one of the biggest barriers that many of businesses of color face is the capital barrier. Thinking through how do we create and generate capital to get people over the hump. We're not always talking about big money here. We're not talking millions of dollars always. We're talking about $5,000 to $10,000 can make the difference between a business staying alive and not.
Yeah. In fact, next month, Mark Watson is going to be speaking on some of that issues about, banking and capital and how to support entrepreneurs that way.
Well, I'm gonna make sure I tune in to Mark.
I hope you do.
I hope so.
Monique, I don't want to talk over you, Monique. Did you have a question you want before I jump into my next one?
No, go ahead. Feel free. Thank you.
I had a few questions, but one of them is sort of honoring that you're wearing both your 12th Baptist hat and your American Cities Coalition hat. And I wonder if you could kind of turn more now to what you see as a pastor and how you see folks being impacted in the economy right now. What are you seeing post-COVID? What are you seeing with, the heat, prices anticipated to rise? What are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah, as a pastor, I'm blessed to be with people in some of their most intimate moments, their most difficult moments, and some of their most celebrated moments. One of the things I've been able to experience, a lot of people are struggling with grief. There's been a lot of loss, some COVID related, some not. And people have struggled to process in this moment and continue to heal and move on. Even if it isn't just personal heaviness, it's the weight of all of the death having impact in the aggregate on community. I also recognize that, though the news cycles have shifted, people are still job insecure, food insecure, housing insecure. And, I would even suggest that the numbers have increased at our food pantry. The folks who are in need have continued to maintain. And so I think, that when we're talking about these efforts and these programs and the intentionality of it, we're thinking critically about how do we make sure that we meet people's needs, and as well as hopefully bringing them to a place of spiritual, physical, and mental wholeness. There's a lot of trauma that people are experiencing. And one thing we try to do as a church is fill the gap where we can. Um, and where we've been blessed to be able to do that, we've done it. And we continue to do it, whether it's been to small businesses who needed a lift, whether it's been to families who called discreetly to ask for support and help, whether it's been for folks who needed food or meals, or someone who just needed a pair of shoes for the new job that they just got. We try to fill those gaps, and that is important for us to live out what we call the gospel work. That Matthew 25, right? When I was hungry, did you feed me? When I was thirsty, did you give me something to drink? When I was sick, did you come visit me? Right? When I was in prison, did you come and see about me? What are we doing? Right? Those are the things that we want to do to be our identity as a church in this Roxbury community. And as a pastor, recognizing that not everyone's experience has been good with religion, I believe that we can be a bright light in the midst of someone's darkness to hopefully give them hope and prayerfully give them a future. And we do that for us through the love of Jesus Christ and a deep belief that's rooted in our faith in God.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Bodrick.
Thank you so much. In thinking about our audience, who includes some local folks, our neighbors, and some suburban friends, what can each of us do individually and as a community to help shift and close the racial wealth gap in Boston? And second part to that would be, how do you see the urban ministry fitting into that work and that vision?
Yeah, these are two big questions I'll try to answer very quickly. One, I think it starts with finding something that you can invest in, finding an issue or a entity or something that you deeply care about individually, and investing in that, giving your time, giving your talent, giving your tithe is what we usually say in church. And so giving those things to an entity or to something that will allow for you to move forward and to push the envelope forward in your individual way. Collectively, aggregating resources, but also speaking up in places where those folks may not be. If you know about issues, if you've heard about it, making the connections or connecting the dots where some folks may not be able to connect those dots. If you're in rooms where these topics are not being brought up, bring them up in these rooms where decision makers are. And I think it's important to make sure that it is a priority and seeing that there is a shared interest in this work for all of us. And I think Urban Ministry as a partner has a host of congregations that they work with that can begin to think through these issues with us. We invite you to be a part of the Roxbury Works work that we're doing, because we know you all have a workforce development program, and we would like to see in the ways in which the very targeted population and community you work with, we can be of service to and be in partnership with as well. But we also think about the ways in which we can support, whether it be through tech support, whether it be through skill support, whether it be through aggregating capital that UU ministry can invest that into these conversations. I'm very interested about the cultural conversations, because that is a big piece of driving the economy of our community. And so we invite you to be not only thought partners, but also investment partners with us as we move to make this happen.
I look forward to continuing I look forward to continuing to build with you, Reverend Bodrick. We'll keep reaching out. And we're so grateful. My last question is really, how do you fit so much into 24 hours? You can't answer that right now. I'm like thinking of all you're doing as a husband, as a father, as a leading the American Cities Coalition, being senior minister at 12th Baptist. I don't comprehend how you could do all that and how you could also share your time so generously here with us tonight. I'm really grateful for it. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank
Literally,
you.
by faith, all things are possible, and so I'm thankful that I
Amen.
have great people in my life that support the vision, and I can be a reciprocal support of their work and their vision, and those things are possible because of that. And so I'm thankful that I even have the opportunity, and I'm even more grateful for the opportunity to share with you all on this night.
Thank you. Look forward to
Thank you so
continuing to
much.
work
Yeah.
together. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you
And
so much.
yeah, we want to thank everybody for joining us. We hope you'll join with us also next month for Mark Watson's conversation in January. And please, once again, go to www.uuum.org. Look at our artist catalog. It's on the front page. Do your holiday shopping there. Shop local, make change.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Be well, everybody. Hope to see you
Take
next
care,
month.
everyone. See you next
Bye.
month.
Bye.
Bye-bye all.
Thank you all.
Bye.